Today, we are tackling one of humanity's oldest, most profound mysteries, consciousness.
Right.
What actually is it?
Okay.
And maybe more to the point for this deep dive, can we as humans ever really truly understand it?
Yeah, that's the core of it. David Chalmers famously called it the hard problem of consciousness.
The hard problem, right?
Exactly. It's wrestling with how, and maybe more importantly, why physical stuff, processes in the brain, give rise to our subjective experience, the feeling of what it's actually like to be you or me.
That inner world.
Precisely. And it's a question that's frankly stumped philosophers and scientists for, well, centuries.
And that leads us neatly into Mysterianism, doesn't it? This idea championed by philosophers like Colin McGinn,
That's the one.
suggesting maybe this hard problem. It might just be fundamentally beyond our cognitive abilities, like our brains aren't built for it. Cognitive closure, I think is the term.
Cognitive closure, exactly. The idea that our minds have limits, just like any other biological system.
So our mission today is to unpack a really compelling modern argument for Mysterianism. And we're doing this using some surprisingly down-to-earth analogies, actually, from AI, artificial intelligence, and even basic biology.
Yeah, you shared this fascinating paper by Daniel Kutney.
That's the one.
And we're going to explore how insights from, artificial neural networks, these layers of abstraction we see in computing, and just the sheer mind-boggling complexity of biological systems.
Yeah. How all that might point to some fundamental limits on understanding the very thing that makes us, well, us.
Exactly.
This is going to be a really fascinating trip into the boundaries of our own minds. Okay, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So we often think, if we built something, we must understand it inside out.
Right. Seems logical.
But artificial neural networks, well, that assumption gets complicated pretty quickly. So let's start there with something we actually made.
Yeah, it's quite striking, actually. Even what you might consider a fairly simple multi-layer neural network. Say one trained on the CIFAR 100 dataset.
Okay, that's for image recognition, right? Like identifying pictures of cars or dogs.
Exactly. Pretty standard AI benchmark stuff. Even that presents real challenges when you try to interpret what's going on inside.
Okay.
Think about just one single artificial neuron in that network. It's getting signals from maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of connections. Each connection has a different weight or importance.
Right.
And understanding what that single neuron is actually doing, it involves figuring out these incredibly complex, non-linear calculations.
So it's not just adding things up.
Not at all. And the feature it learns to detect might not be something obvious to us, like a specific shape. It could be some weird, abstract combination of edges, colors, textures.
Something we wouldn't even have a name for.
Probably not. And for us to try and grasp how it's juggling all those different signals at the same time, well, it can get overwhelmingly complex really fast.
Wow. That barrier right there with just one artificial neuron we designed. That's kind of profound. It reminds me of Cesar Hidalgo's idea, person bytes.
Person bytes, yeah. The concept that each of us has a sort of finite capacity, a limit on how much complexity or knowledge we can handle.
So the takeaway is, if even one artificial neuron can stretch our person byte limit, what does that imply for understanding something like consciousness?
It's a powerful point. If understanding the function of just one artificial neuron, which is operating in these, high-dimensional spaces, basically dealing with tons of variables simultaneously, if that can push past what a single mind can really wrap itself around, well, it lends pretty strong support to the Mysterian view.
Okay.
It suggests our mental bandwidth, our person bytes, might just be fundamentally limited when we try to piece together how all these connections work together, even in systems we created.
Right. So the complexity of a single artificial neuron is already pushing our limits. But, okay, our brains, real brains, aren't just one neuron.
Not even close.
They're layers upon layers of unbelievable complexity. And to help us get a handle on this next level, the paper uses a really good analogy, I thought. The microprocessor.
Yeah, it's a very helpful analogy. Think about how a microprocessor, like the chip in your computer, works. At the very bottom, you have transistors, tiny switches.
Billions of them.
Billions. These make up logic gates, AND gates, OR gates, things like that. Those combine to build, say, arithmetic logic units, ALUs, which do the actual calculation.
Right, the math part.
Exactly. And those ALUs are part of the bigger CPU, the central processing unit. Then you have layers of software on top, assembly language close to the hardware, and then high-level languages like Python or C++.
So multiple levels.
Multiple levels. And the point is, to really understand a complex program running at the top level, like Microsoft Word, you ideally need some insight into those foundational bits, right down to the logic gates, doing their simple little jobs. If you don't get the basics, the whole thing remains a bit mysterious.
Okay, I see the layers. So how does this map onto neural networks, both the artificial ones and, crucially, the biological ones in our heads?
Well, artificial neural networks actually mirror this layered structure pretty closely. You start with the weights on the connections.
Okay, the basic level.
Then you have the individual neurons, each with its activation function. That's the rule deciding if it fires or not.
Mm-hmm.
These are organized into layers, often multiple hidden layers between the input and the output.
Got it.
So just like the microprocessor analogy, if you don't understand how those basic units, the neurons, function and interact, and how information gets transformed layer by layer.
Then understanding the whole system, the consciousness part, stays really difficult.
Exactly. It remains profoundly incomplete. And these layers, they add more cognitive hurdles. Understanding how whole clusters of neurons or entire layers work together is arguably even harder than understanding one single neuron. It adds more points where our understanding might just hit a wall, more cognitive closure.
Okay, so layers upon layers of difficulty. Now, if the artificial stuff, the things we build, are already pushing our cognitive limits, what happens when we turn to the actual biological brain?
Yes.
This wasn't designed by engineers. This is the product of, billions of years of messy evolution.
That's a really crucial distinction. Unlike a computer chip, which is meticulously designed, biological systems evolved gradually, often in ways that seem kind of haphazard from an engineering perspective.
Right, not optimized for our understanding.
Not at all. And this results in layers of complexity that are just incredibly daunting to try and figure out. Look at synthetic biology, for instance. There was this effort, Hutchison and colleagues back in 2016, where they tried to build a minimal synthetic bacterial cell, the simplest possible living thing.
Okay, stripping it down to basics.
Right. And even then, they found that about 25% of the genes in this minimal cell had functions they just didn't know.
A quarter of the parts in the simplest cell were a mystery.
Yep. That really highlights a fundamental gap in our knowledge, even for what we think of as basic life.
And biological neurons, the ones in our brain, they are definitely not minimal.
Oh, absolutely not. Biological neurons are vastly, vastly more intricate than the artificial ones we model them on.
How so?
Well, each one is an incredibly complex cell on its own. It has thousands of synapses, those connection points.
Okay.
All sorts of different ion channels controlling its electrical behavior, complex biochemical cascades happening inside. Markram wrote about this back in 2006. Our artificial neurons, they're hugely simplified models.
So caricatures almost.
In a way, yes. Real biological neurons are an exponentially more complex puzzle. Their inherent complexity just at the single cell level might genuinely place them beyond our full grasp.
Which makes understanding consciousness, built from billions of these things interacting.
Increasingly elusive, yeah. It adds another really significant barrier, another strong argument for cognitive closure.
So biological neurons just ratchet up the complexity immensely. It really drives home that we're dealing with systems that evolved, they weren't designed for us to easily understand. That really makes you stop and think. But okay, let's shift gears slightly. Even if we grant that maybe, theoretically, our brains could somehow grasp consciousness, are the tools we have, our current scientific methods, even up to the job?
That is a fantastic question, and the paper brings in some really intriguing research here.
Oh.
Yeah, it talks about a study by Jonas and Cording from 2017. They were neuroscientists, and they decided to apply their state-of-the-art neuroscience methods to a microprocessor.
Wait, they studied a computer chip like it was a brain.
Essentially, yes. They used techniques similar to fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging.
Which tracks brain activity by looking at blood flow.
Right, so they used analogous methods to visualize activity patterns on the chip. And get this, they even identified neuron-like structures within the microprocessor that seem to light up during specific computational tasks.
Wow.
It's kind of like that famous study, the Jennifer Aniston neuron study by Quiroga and colleagues.
Where they found a neuron in someone's brain that fired specifically for pictures of Jennifer Aniston.
Exactly. So they found similar task-specific activity in the microprocessor.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But what was the catch? What did it reveal about the limits of their methods?
Well, that was the crucial part. While they could successfully pinpoint certain components and see that they were active during certain tasks, that knowledge did not translate into a deep, comprehensive understanding of how the microprocessor actually worked as a whole system.
Ah, okay. They saw bits light up, but not the bigger picture.
Precisely. The complex interplay between the hardware, the chip itself, and the software running on it created these layers of abstraction. Remember our earlier point?
Right, the layers.
Those layers proved really hard to untangle with their methods. The overall operating principles remained elusive.
So the implication is,
If we can't fully understand the workings of a microprocessor, something humans literally designed and built using these sophisticated methods, then trying to use those same methods to fully understand the immense complexity of the biological brain and the consciousness it somehow generates, well, that seems inherently problematic, doesn't it?
Yeah, that is a pretty sobering conclusion from that study.
It really reinforces the Mysterian perspective.
Yeah.
It suggests that even with our best current tools, consciousness might just remain an enigma.
So putting it all together then, you've laid out these 4 really compelling lines of argument pointing towards Mysterianism. First, the sheer difficulty, the opacity of even simple artificial neurons.
Right, the person byte limit kicking in early.
Then the compounding challenge of understanding systems built with these layers of abstraction, like microprocessors or neural nets.
Yeah, each layer adding difficulty.
Third, the absolutely overwhelming biological complexity of real neurons and brains, products of evolution, not design.
Which dwarfs the artificial models.
And finally, this point about the inherent limitations we might be facing with our current research methods, as shown by that microprocessor study.
Exactly.
It feels like each argument builds on the previous one, painting this picture of a really, really monumental challenge.
Yes, I think taken together, these points do suggest that fully comprehending consciousness might be inherently difficult for us, maybe even impossible. It provides a pretty robust, modern angle on why that hard problem is still so hard. Why it keeps resisting a full explanation.
It is a truly humbling thought, isn't it? That the very thing that gives us our subjective experience, our sense of self, our consciousness, might just be forever beyond our complete understanding.
It really makes you wonder if understanding even these simplified human-made models of intelligence is already pushing the boundaries of what our minds can handle. Well, does thinking about it this way change how you view humanity's ultimate potential for self-understanding? What limits might actually exist for our knowledge, not just about consciousness, but maybe about the universe itself?
That is a profound thought to sit with, definitely something to mull over as we, go about our conscious lives. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive into the boundaries of cognitive closure.
It's been fascinating.
We hope you feel a little more well-informed and maybe just a little more intrigued by the mysteries that still remain. Until next time, keep exploring.